Hello friends, in this video we are going to discuss about the bare pods and static pods in Kubernetes. The bare pods, these are the pods which we create in Kubernetes without the involvement of the controllers. When we create the standalone pods, these pods will not be controlled by the controllers like deployments, replica sets, jobs, daemon sets and so on. So to create these standalone pods, we'll execute kubectl run command and that request will go to the API server and then API server will interact with kubelet. Then the kubelet will create the pod in a particular worker node. These standalone pods will not be controlled by the deployments, replica sets, etc. which belong to the kube controller manager or cloud controller manager. The next one is static pods. Static pods are the pods which are managed by the kubelet. So kubelets will create and manage these static pods. So for static pods, we'll have specific YAML files. We need to put them in a specific directory in the control plane node or in worker nodes. So kubelet will watch those YAML files and it will create and manage those pods. So these pods will be specific to a particular worker node. That means kubelet in worker node 1 will manage the pods in the worker node 1 and kubelet in worker node 2 will manage corresponding static pods in the worker node 2 and so on. These static pods are managed only by the kubelet in a particular node and these are not controlled by API server. When kubelet creates the static pods, it creates corresponding mirror pods in the API server so that we can query the pods by using kubectl commands. But these mirror pods will not be controlled by API server. So let us start with standalone pods. Here we have a 3-node cluster. Let us get the nodes of the cluster. These are the 3 nodes. Here master node is being used as the control plane node and other 2 are worker nodes. Let us see if any pods existing in the default namespace. As of now, we don't have any pods in the default namespace. Now let us create standalone pod in this default namespace. For that, we'll use the kubectl command. For kubectl command, we can provide the command line options or we can provide an input YAML file which contains the pod configuration. So before providing the YAML file as input, let us generate the YAML file by using kubectl with dry run option. For this demo, we'll try to create an example nginx pod. So let us specify the kubectl command. For standalone pods, we need to provide run subcommand. Now we need to provide the container image for the pod. By default, the nginx container runs on port 80. So we need to expose that port by using port option. Now let us specify the name of the pod. Now we need to specify the dry run option. For dry run, we can provide any of the 3 values, client, server and none. By default, the option is none if we don't provide this dry run option, which means when we execute kubectl command for the none option, it will create an object in the server. We can also provide the server option. In this case, in the server, it will verify if any errors in the YAML input, then it will provide the output, but it won't create the object in the server. We can also provide option client. It will verify the client side itself and generate the YAML file, but it won't send the YAML file to the server. So now let us provide the client option. So this is the YAML file which is getting generated by using the above command. Here we can see that the name of the pod is my nginx. It will use the image as nginx latest and this will expose the port 80 which will run in the nginx container when this pod is created. We can also verify if any pods created in the server. So we don't have any pods in the server. Now let us provide the server option for the dry run. So this will send this YAML to the server and server will verify if any issues in the YAML file, but it won't create the pod in the server. And this is the output of the server, but server did not create the pod. We can verify that. You can see there are no resources in the default namespace. Now we can provide the none option. If you don't specify any option, then it will provide the same output as previously, but it would create the pod in the server. So now we can see the output provided by server and we can see that the pod is created now. Now let us delete this pod. So now we have seen the 3 options which are provided to dry run. Now let us use the client option itself. So we are writing the output of the command to an example file here. So there is no pod created. Now we can use this YAML file as an input to kubectl run command to create the standalone pod. So let us do that. So for this we are giving the apply subcommand, and we are providing the input as nginx pod.yaml file. So now we can see the pod is created. Let us verify the pods. So now we can see the pod is up and running. So here, if we delete this pod, since it is a standalone pod, the pod will not get recreated because it is not controlled by any of the controllers in the control plane. So now let us delete the pod. So the pod is deleted. Now we can see the pods again. Now there are no resources found in the default namespace. This is expected because it is not controlled by any of the controllers, so that they would not restart this pod. Static pods are handled by kubelet only. They will not be controlled by the control plane. So kubelet only will ensure the static pods run as desired. So let us go to one of the worker nodes and we'll verify how we can create a static pod in Kubernetes. This is the worker node 1. Let us find the kubelet process here. Here we can see a kubelet process is running. Here it is using some configuration files like bootstrap kubeconfig and the kubeconfig and the config file. So this kubeconfig file will be used to connect to the cluster, that means to the API server. So let us open that file. Here we can see the URL of API server. So this kubelet will try to connect to this API server. Now let us open the configuration file for this kubelet. So in this file we can see various parameters. Out of this we have a variable called static pod path. So this parameter specifies where it will look for the YAML files for creation of static pods. So in this case this is the directory. So let us go to this directory. So as of now we don't have any files in this directory. So if we want to create a static pod, we need to place corresponding YAML file in this directory. Now let us add a sample file in this directory. Before that, let us see what are all the pods running in the cluster in the default namespace. So here we don't have any resources in the default namespace. So we can use this pod YAML file which was created earlier. So let us copy this file to the worker node in the static pod path location. Now we have seen how to create a standalone or bare pod using kubectl run command as well as kubectl apply command. Now let us see how to create the static pods. This is the IP address of the first node. So we are moving to the temp directory under first node. Similarly, we can move that to the second node as well. So now let us go to the worker nodes and copy these files to the pod manifest location. So I have copied in the node 1. Similarly, I will perform the same in the node 2. So now we have copied in both the nodes. Now we should be able to see two static pods in the Kubernetes cluster. So generally, when kubelet creates a static pod in a worker node, it will create a mirror pod inside API server, so that we can query the API server to see these static pods in the cluster. So let us see the static pods now. Now we can see there are two static pods running. This is corresponding to worker node 01 and this is corresponding to worker node 02. So when we create static pods, this node name will be attached to the basic pod name. So this is my nginx worker node 01 and this is my nginx worker node 02. These are mirror pods in the API server. We can query these pods, but we cannot delete these pods. So let us try to delete one of the pods. Even the output shows the pod gets deleted, but in actual case the pod is not deleted. Let us query the pods again. Here we can see the pod still running. This is because these pods are controlled by kubelet. So the API server will not have control on these pods. So if we want to delete the pod, we should delete the YAML file in the manifest location. So let me try to delete the file in the second node. So let me remove this file. Now we don't have any file in the manifest directory in worker node 02. So this means we should not have corresponding static pod in this node. So let us see the pods now. Now we can see there is only one pod running in the worker node 01. This way the static pods gets created and maintained by kubelet. This is the IP address of the first node. So we are moving to the temp directory under first node. Similarly, we can move that to the second node as well. So now let us go to the worker nodes and copy these files to the pod manifest location. So I have copied in the node 1. Similarly, I will perform the same in the node 2. So now we have copied in both the nodes. Now we should be able to see two static pods in the Kubernetes cluster. So generally, when Kubelet creates a static pod in a worker node, it will create a mirror pod inside API server so that we can query the API server to see these static pods in the cluster. So let us see the static pods now. Now we can see there are two static pods running. This is corresponding to worker node 01 and this is corresponding to worker node 02. So when we create static pods, this node name will be attached to the basic pod name. So this is my nginx worker node 01 and this is my nginx worker node 02. These are mirror pods in the API server. We can query these pods, but we cannot delete these pods. So let us try to delete one of the pods. Even the output shows the pod gets deleted, but in actual case, the pod is not deleted. Let us query the pods again. Here we can see the pod still running. This is because these pods are controlled by Kubelet. So the API server will not have control on these pods. So if we want to delete the pod, we should delete the YAML file in the manifest location. So let me try to delete the file in the second node. So let me remove this file. Now we don't have any file in the manifest directory in worker node 02. So this means we should not have corresponding static pod in this node. So let us see the pods now. Now we can see there is only one pod running in the worker node 01. This way the static pods gets created and maintained by Kubelet.